World War II wasn't just about the thunderous roars of tanks across European plains or the dogfights fought high above enemy lines. Beneath the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, a different kind of war raged. A conflict where steel titans clashed in open waters and in the silent depths. Here, strategy and innovation became the weapons of choice, with the fates of nations hanging in the balance. We all know about the infamous attack on Pearl Harbor, the act of aggression that dragged the United States into the global conflict. But the war against Imperial Japan stretched far beyond that single devastating day. It morphed into a brutal struggle for dominance, fought with the unwavering determination of land, sea, and air. It is a thrilling and brutal saga, where American ingenuity and technological advancements were up against the mighty Imperial Japanese naval forces. We'll explore how American U-boats cloaked themselves in secrecy, cracked the enemy communication codes, broke their shipping lines, and hunted them across the Pacific. Let's explore some of the most legendary skirmishes and battles between two of the most advanced navies of the time. So buckle up for a journey that takes you beyond the enemy lines, where you will learn about some of the most brutal and key battles of the Pacific War. But before talking about instances where Japanese ships were sunk by American U-boats, it's important to know the background. While the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941 ignited the flames of open war in the Pacific, the embers of conflict had been smoldering for years prior. To understand the true scope of American victories in the Pacific, we need to delve into the tangled web of history that led to this clash of titans. Fueled by both a desire to control resources and by fervent nationalism, Japan embarked on an aggressive expansionist policy in the early 20th century. This included the annexation of Korea and Manchuria, setting them on a collision course with Western powers and established interests in the region, particularly the United States. Japan, a resource-poor nation, craved access to raw materials like oil and rubber to fuel its growing industry and military might. The resource-rich colonies of Southeast Asia and the Dutch East Indies became particularly attractive targets. However, the US, with its own economic and strategic interests in the region, viewed Japanese expansion with increasing alarm. Following the turmoil of World War I, Japanese military leadership gained significant political influence. This militaristic faction believed that war was necessary to achieve national greatness and secure vital resources. Their growing power and influence further strained relations with the US. In 1931, Japan invaded Manchuria, a Chinese province rich in resources. This act of aggression was condemned by the international community, including the League of Nations, of which Japan was a member. The US responded by refusing to recognize the Japanese puppet state established in Manchuria. These escalating tensions highlighted the growing rift between the two nations. Oil was a critical fuel for modern warfare, and the US, following Japanese expansion into resource-rich Southeast Asia, imposed a series of economic sanctions in 1940 and 1941. These sanctions included an oil embargo on the exports to Japan, a move designed to cripple their military capabilities. This embargo effectively cut off a lifeline for Japan, pushing them to a desperate gamble, seizing the resources they need by force. Negotiations between the US and Japan in the months leading up to Pearl Harbor failed to resolve the crisis. Japan demanded the US lift the embargo and cease their support of China, which they were engaged in a brutal war with. The US, unwilling to condone Japanese aggression and unwilling to back down from their principles, refused. This diplomatic stalemate sealed the fate of peace in the Pacific. With their backs against the wall and determined to secure the resources they deemed essential, the Japanese military launched a surprise attack on the US naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii on December 7, 1941. This act of aggression instantly dragged the US into World War II, setting the stage for a brutal and protracted struggle across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, with American U-boats at the helm, ready to take on the Japanese Navy. On December 8, 1941, almost simultaneously with the attack on Pearl Harbor, Japanese airstrikes pummeled Wake Island. The American garrison, consisting of Marines, Navy personnel, and civilian contractors, found their aircrafts heavily damaged. Despite being outnumbered, the American defenders displayed remarkable resilience. They managed to repel the first Japanese landing attempt on December 11th, sinking 2 Japanese destroyers in a stunning display of defensive firepower. This early success became a rallying point for American morale in the Pacific, showcasing the tenacity of their forces. This was also the first Battle of the Pacific Theater where the American U-boats were introduced. 2 American submarines, Triton and Tamber, were part of the Battle of Wake Island. Their job was to patrol the waters along Wake Island. It was also the same battle where the Triton would become the first American U-boat to fire a torpedo at the Japanese ships, although it could not hit the target to the fullest. Undeterred from the initial setback, the Japanese assembled a larger invasion force for a second attempt. On December 23rd, they returned with renewed strength. After a fierce defense, the Americans were forced to surrender due to dwindling ammunition and disrupted communication lines. However, that was not before many American U-boats had carried out several brutal attacks against the Japanese forces. American forces, weakened by the demolition suffered at Pearl Harbor, could not contain the onslaught from Japanese forces and had to surrender Wake Island. This struggle also highlighted the vulnerability of American ships, with a few being sunk. The conflict of Wake Island changed into a setback for America in the early days of the Pacific War. Not only did the island fall into Japanese hands, over 1,200 American military personnel and civilians were captured. But this was just the beginning of a war that would last for the next few years. Where the US Navy fell short was at the Battle of Wake Island. Their U-boats had the only success in this battle. This gave the authorities an idea to make U-boats an integral part of every campaign being led in the Pacific from then onwards. The pivotal Battle of Midway followed a few months after the Wake Island disappointment. Did the US learn from its mistakes? And how did the newly deployed U-boats perform? Let's find out. Fought from June 4th to 7th, the Battle of Midway marked a turning point in the Pacific War. While aircraft carriers undoubtedly played a starring role in this dramatic clash, a new branch of the American Navy played a crucial, yet often unseen part: U-boats, or more commonly known as the submarines. Following the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor, the US Navy desperately needed a way to counter Japan's seemingly unstoppable expansion. A critical breakthrough came with the American ability to crack Japanese naval codes. This intelligence revealed a daring Japanese plan to lure out and destroy the remaining American carriers at Midway Atoll. Armed with intel, Admiral Chester W. Nimitz and his team devised a daring counteroffensive. The centerpiece of this plan revolved around America's precious remaining aircraft carriers, the USS Enterprise, Hornet, and Yorktown. These ships, hidden beyond the horizon, would wait for the approaching Japanese fleet. However, the story does not end with the carriers. U-boats also played a vital, albeit less flashy, role. Several American U-boats, including the Grayling, Tamber, Muir, and Trout, patrolled designated areas around Midway, forming a crucial underwater net. Their mission was to scout for the approaching Japanese fleet and potentially launch surprise torpedo attacks. Operating underwater presented its own set of difficulties. Limited visibility and communication ranges made it challenging for submarines to pinpoint the exact location of the Japanese fleet. Despite their best efforts, none of the American submarines managed to score a direct hit on Japanese carriers during the battle. The role of American U-boats, however, extended beyond just sinking enemy ships. Their presence served as a regular threat to Japanese surface vessels, forcing them to navigate carefully and deplete resources on anti-submarine war measures. This disrupted their formations and delayed their attacks on Midway. After losing their carriers, the Japanese attempted counterattacks but were repelled by the American carrier-based aircrafts. The Battle of Midway marked the first naval engagement in which aircraft carriers did not sight each other, with all attacks conducted by carrier-based aircrafts. This battle was a turning point in the Pacific War. It halted Japan's expansion and placed them on the defensive for the remainder of the conflict. The loss of 4 fleet carriers crippled Japan's naval air arm and shifted the balance of naval power in favor of the United States. Once again, a critical role was played by the U-boats, giving vital surveillance and attacking capabilities, providing the US with the cutting edge they lacked and giving the Japanese a new, more lethal threat to deal with. On the back of U-boat success, the US held their own at the Battle of Midway. However, it was now time to take it on against the Japanese. Guadalcanal was a strategically important area in the South Pacific, and capturing it would provide Allied forces with a base to launch further operations against the Japanese positions in the region, and potentially threaten lines of communication between Japan and its occupied territories in Southeast Asia. Thus began the brutal Guadalcanal campaign, fought from August 1942 to February 1943. The campaign began with a surprise amphibious landing by the US Marines on Guadalcanal. However, Japanese forces quickly regrouped, and the fight for the island became a bloody stalemate. The struggle extended to the surrounding waters with a series of intense naval battles. These were not daytime slugfests, they were brutal nighttime clashes where ships fought at close range. American destroyers particularly proved adept at maneuvering and unleashing devastating firepower in these chaotic engagements. However, it was not until the deployment of U-boats that the Americans gained an advantage over their opponents. American U-boats patrolled the waters around Guadalcanal, acting as the eyes and ears of the Allied fleet. They stalked Japanese supply convoys, aiming to serve their lifeline to the island. Both sides poured reinforcements into the fight. American U-boats carried their critical involvement and once again played a vital role, this time protecting troop transports and engaging in duels with Japanese warships. Maintaining control of the seas was crucial for supplying American troops on the island and ensuring their continued fight for Henderson Field, a vital airfield. While aircraft and warships did their job, patrolling and scouting incoming Japanese ships was the job assigned to the U-boats. Not only did they provide surveillance, they also attacked and hunted incoming enemy ships in and around the Guadalcanal waters. While the land war remained brutal, American naval victories like the Battle of Santa Cruz Islands, October 1942, ensured control of the surrounding waters. This allowed the US to continue resupplying its forces and gradually gaining the upper hand. By early 1943, facing logistical nightmares and dwindling resources due to American interdiction efforts, Japanese forces began evacuating Guadalcanal. The Allies, with continued naval support, secured the island by February 9, 1943. The Guadalcanal campaign stands as a testament to the combined efforts of American forces. While the Marines on the ground bore the brunt of the brutal fighting, the critical role of the US Navy, from the destroyers and cruisers to U-boats, cannot be overstated. Their relentless pursuit of Japanese ships and their dominance at sea ultimately succeeded in victory and paved the way for further Allied advancements in the Pacific. Less than a month after capturing Guadalcanal, Allied forces clawed their way back across the Pacific as disrupting Japanese supply lines became a top priority. The Battle of the Bismarck Sea, fought from March 2nd to 4th, 1943, stands as a prime example of American air and naval power, delivering a crippling blow to Japanese logistics. American codebreakers, having cracked Japanese naval codes, intercepted crucial information about a troop convoy heading towards Lae, New Guinea. This vital intel provided the Allies with the opportunity for a decisive ambush. The Japanese convoy, a tempting target for the Allies, consisted of 8 lumbering troop transports escorted by 8 destroyers. These troop-laden vessels offered a chance to inflict significant casualties on Japanese ground forces. The battle unfolded as a coordinated air assault by American and Australian forces. While the aerial assault took center stage, American U-boats were also in amongst the thick of things. Submarines like USS Greyback and USS Grampus patrolled the Bismarck Sea, acting as the eyes and ears of the Allied forces. They provided vital reconnaissance, pinpointing the exact location of the convoy and any potential stragglers, ensuring a more concentrated and efficient air attack. The relentless air assault and the crucial intel from the U-boats culminated in a resounding Allied victory. All 8 Japanese troop transports were sunk, taking a devastating toll on the Japanese manpower. 4 Japanese destroyers were also sent to the bottom, further diminishing their ability to protect their convoys. Estimates suggest over 3,000 Japanese soldiers perished in this critical battle. Once again, another Battle of the Pacific theater showcased the crucial role of U-boats in gathering intelligence and ensuring a decisive outcome. This victory significantly weakened Japanese forces in New Guinea and served as a turning point in the fight for control of the Pacific. So far, the U-boats had outplayed the Japanese at every corner of the Pacific theater, but it was time for a big step ahead. Defending small islands in the Pacific was one thing, but were these boats ready to take it to the Japanese in their own backyard? The Battle of the Philippine Sea, a thunderous clash from June 19th to 20th, 1944, stands as a pivotal moment in World War II. This wasn't just another fight, it was a turning point that shattered Japanese naval power and secured American dominance in the vast Pacific theater. The battle erupted during the American campaign to wrest back the Mariana Islands, Saipan, Guam, and Tinian. They weren't just any islands, they were stepping stones to victory. Capturing them would provide the Allies with air bases within striking distance of Japan itself. For the Japanese, holding on to these islands was a desperate attempt to maintain their crumbling defensive perimeter. The American Fifth Fleet, under Admiral Raymond Spruance, was a formidable force. Task Force 58, led by Vice Admiral Mark Mitscher, had the offensive muscle. 15 aircraft carriers, bristling with deadly fighter planes and bombers. 7 battleships and a flotilla of destroyers provided a robust escort. And do not forget the mighty U-boats that lurked beneath the waves, silent sentinels. The Japanese mobile fleet, commanded by Vice Admiral Yusaburo Ozawa, was a significant force as well. 9 aircraft carriers, some of the largest in the world, formed the core of their attack force. Battleships, cruisers, and destroyers completed their lineup, carrying hundreds of planes. However, unknown to them, American codebreakers had cracked their communication codes, giving the Allies a critical advantage. American U-boats weren't just waiting for a fight, they were the unseen heroes in the lead-up to the battle. They patrolled the vast ocean, their periscopes scanning for signs of the Japanese fleet. The USS Albacore played a particularly crucial role. On June 19th, they spotted the mighty Japanese carrier Taiho. Despite technical challenges, Albacore launched a daring torpedo attack, striking a critical blow. The initial damage might have been manageable, but the internal fires raged out of control, eventually leading to a catastrophic explosion that sent the Taiho to the bottom of the ocean. Another American submarine, the USS Kavala, etched its name into history the same day. Encountering the Japanese carrier Shokaku, Kavala unleashed a spread of torpedoes, 3 of which found their mark. The Shokaku, critically damaged and engulfed in flames, met a similar fate as the Taiho, leaving the Japanese fleet reeling. The main battle unfolded with a ferocity that left the Japanese reeling. Nicknamed the Great Mariana Turkey Shoot, American radar technology and superior pilot training proved devastating. Wave after wave of Japanese planes were shot down by American fighters. The skies became a graveyard of Japanese aircraft, with over 300 lost in a single day. This wasn't just a loss of machines, it was a severe blow to Japan's already dwindling pool of experienced pilots. The Battle of the Philippine Sea marked a decisive moment in the Pacific War. The Japanese Navy was left crippled, with 3 carriers lost and hundreds of irreplaceable pilots gone. Their ability to conduct large-scale carrier operations was effectively eliminated. This strategic victory allowed the Americans to continue their island-hopping campaign, eventually capturing Mariana and bringing Japan within bomber range. All thanks to the U-boats, who worked relentlessly hard before, during, and after the battle too. The battle may have been won, but the war was far from over. American U-boats continued their relentless pursuit of Japanese shipping. They patrolled vital sea lanes, sinking supply convoys and warships, further straining Japan's resources and contributing to the overall Allied strategy. The constant threat of U-boat attacks forced Japan to divert resources to anti-submarine warfare, hindering their overall operational capabilities. By late 1944, the tides had already turned in the favor of the United States and the Allied powers. Japan's mighty navy had been defeated and decimated at every battle for the past 2 years. Some of the most devastating battles had turned in America's favor due to the cutting edge provided by the U-boats. However, some of the most crucial areas in the Pacific were still under Japanese control. One such area was the Philippines. The Battle of Leyte Gulf was fought to liberate the Philippines from Japanese control. The fight for the Philippines wasn't just a land war, it was a strategic move to sever Japanese access to vital resources in Southeast Asia and tighten the grip on their home islands. The Allies, primarily the United States, assembled a massive fleet. Hundreds of ships, including battleships, aircraft carriers, cruisers, destroyers, and most importantly, U-boats and submarines. The Japanese fleet, though smaller, remained a formidable force. Once again, the U-boat strategy was put in action by the Americans even before the war had begun. American U-boats like the USS Darter and USS Dace were already on patrol, once again acting as the Allies' underwater eyes and ears. These U-boats meticulously tracked Japanese movements, dodging depth charges and navigating treacherous waters. These boats ended up achieving some of the biggest feats of the entire campaign during the Battle of Leyte Gulf. The American submarine USS Darter spotted the mighty Japanese heavy cruiser Atago, Admiral Kurita's flagship. A well-placed torpedo attack was launched, and within seconds it sent shockwaves through the Japanese fleet, not only crippling a key warship, but also dealing a significant psychological blow. Another submarine, the USS Dace, added to the chaos by inflicting heavy damages on a second Japanese cruiser Takao. This ended in further disruptions in Japanese formations and provided valuable intel to the Allied fleet. The Battle of Leyte Gulf was divided into 4 main engagements, each having its own significance in the overall Pacific theater. The Battle of the Shibuyan Sea, October 23rd to 24th. Kurita's center force, including the massive battleship Musashi, moved through the Shibuyan Sea, only to be intercepted by American carrier planes. Despite heavy losses and the sinking of Musashi, Kurita pressed on towards Leyte Gulf. The Battle of Surigao Strait, October 24th to 25th. Admiral Nishimura's southern force attempted to navigate the Surigao Strait, but encountered a well-prepared Allied force under Admiral Jesse Oldendorf. Using the classic crossing the T tactic, Oldendorf's battleships and cruisers decimated Nishimura's force, marking the last time battleships would engage each other in naval combat. Battle off Cape Engano, October 25th. Admiral Ozawa's northern force, acting as a decoy, lured Admiral Hesley's Third Fleet northward. Halsey took the bait, leading to the sinking of all 4 Japanese carriers in Ozawa's fleet. However, this maneuver left the San Bernardino Strait unguarded, allowing Kurita's force to slip through. Battle off Samar, October 25th. Kurita's center force emerged near the American escort carriers and destroyers of Task Unit 7743, known as Taffy 3, commanded by Admiral Clifton Sprague. Despite being outgunned, Taffy 3 launched a desperate and heroic defense. Destroyers like USS Johnston and USS Hull made daring torpedo runs against Japanese battleships, and carrier-based aircraft launched relentless strikes. Their courage and tenacity inflicted significant damage on Kurita's force, ultimately forcing a Japanese retreat. The Battle of Leyte Gulf resulted in a decisive Allied victory. The Japanese Navy suffered irreparable losses, including 3 battleships, 4 aircraft carriers, 10 cruisers, and 11 destroyers. This battle marked the end of Japan's ability to conduct large-scale naval operations, shifting the balance of power in the Pacific firmly in favor of the Allies. The contribution of American U-boats and submarines in reconnaissance and direct engagement were instrumental in detecting and disrupting Japanese movements. Following the decisive victory at Leyte Gulf in later 1944, the Allies continued their relentless push towards the Japanese mainland. The next critical target, Okinawa, a strategically important island just 340 miles from Japan. Capturing it would provide a vital staging ground for the planned invasion of Japan, codenamed Operation Downfall. A massive armada of 1,300 ships, carrying over 180,000 American soldiers and Marines, were part of this battle. Alongside them, the United States also had battleships, aircraft carriers, cruisers, destroyers, and U-boats. Japan also had a tenacious force of around 100,000 troops, dug deep into a network of fortified defenses across the island. They were prepared to fight to the last man. The battle began from April 1st and lasted until June 22nd, 1945. It was one of the most brutal clashes that had fierce ground combat, relentless waves of kamikaze suicide bombers diving from the sky, and thunderous naval engagements. Even before the first wave of Marines hit the beaches, American submarines and U-boats were already on the scene. These underwater warriors played a critical role throughout the battle. Reconnaissance. American U-boats gathered vital intelligence on Japanese defenses and the shipping lanes they relied on for supplies. This information was essential for planning the invasion and keeping the Allied fleet safe. Cutting the lifeline. Throughout the battle, U-boats actively hunted Japanese supply convoys, attempting to bring reinforcements and resources to Okinawa. By disrupting these supply lines, they helped isolate the island and weaken Japanese resistance. Kamikaze defense. As the battle intensified, the Japanese unleashed a terrifying weapon, the kamikaze. These suicide bombers inflicted heavy damage on Allied ships. U-boats provided early warning of incoming attacks and helped the fleet from any underwater threats. Operation Iceberg, April 1st, 1945. The initial amphibious landings, a massive show of force supported by naval bombardment and airstrikes. U-boats patrolled the surrounding waters, guarding against any surprise Japanese counterattacks. Kikusui waves, April to June 1945. The Japanese launched 10 major kamikaze offensives, inflicting devastating damages. U-boats once again played a crucial role in detecting these attacks early and helping defend the fleet. As the battle raged on land, the Japanese launched desperate counterattacks at sea as well. American U-boats continued to engage these vessels, further crippling Japanese naval capabilities. The Battle of Okinawa was a bloody affair. The Allies eventually secured the island, but not without suffering heavy casualties. The victory came at a steep price. The kamikaze attacks alone sank 36 US ships and damaged hundreds more. The ferocity of the battle and the staggering loss of life on both sides had a profound impact. This ultimately influenced the decision to use atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, leading to Japan's surrender. The Battle of Okinawa once again showcased the critical role of American U-boats in the Pacific War. Their work played a vital role in securing Allied victory. Okinawa was the final, brutal struggle before the surrender of Japan, and the silent hunters played their part to the very end. The war in the Pacific was a brutal clash fought on land, air, and the sea. While battleships and aircraft carriers often captured the headlines, the relentless work of American U-boats played a critical role in Allied victory. Whether it was intelligence gathering beyond Japanese lines, providing vital information on the enemy's movements, or fleet composition, American U-boats did it all. The U-boats also actively hunted the Japanese supply convoys, choking off the flow of reinforcements and resources to critical battlefields like Guadalcanal, Okinawa, and more. At Midway, they served as scouts, while at Guadalcanal, they patrolled vital waters and disrupted Japanese supply lines. Battles like the Bismarck Sea and the Philippine Sea showcased their effectiveness in coordinated attacks with other Allied forces. The Battle of Leyte Gulf further solidified their role, with submarines like Darter and Dace inflicting heavy damage on Japanese warships. The impact of U-boats was evident throughout the war. Hence, the story of the Pacific War is incomplete without acknowledging the American U-boats.